We are back. It's Friday. It's a cold Friday, and we're trying to understand what's happening on the NSE. Today, activity is muted, but yesterday, we actually touched R1 billion shillings worth of turnover. There was a heavy trade that went through Safaricom, and this was largely driven by the foreign investors. We've seen the foreign investors come back, and they are looking at the blue chip companies. What are the blue chip companies? They are the companies that dominate trade and are mature and are well regarded by investors. Safaricom, KCB, Equity Bank, EABL, BAT, Cooperative Bank, as well as APSA tend to make part and parcel of the blue chips. Looking at the indices performance, 2.87% was the percentage change day on day for the NSE All Share, which closed at 140.28 shillings. Same trajectory for the other indices, and this was largely pushed by Safaricom, which was trading between 29 and 30 shillings per share. Let's have a look at what happened in terms of equity movement and looking at turnover, the next slide. All right. So as we wait for the next slide, as I had said, there was a material trade that went through Safaricom yesterday. Today being Friday, not too much is happening on the stock exchange, but you can see what happened there yesterday. 1.2 billion is the value that was traded yesterday, and the majority of this was Safaricom. Foreign investors made up 85% of this activity, and they were largely they were largely buyers. What were they buying? They were buying Safaricom, they bought equity, and they also bought a bit of KCB. Equity and KCB, we actually saw them go above the 36 shilling mark. We had seen a bit of weakness earlier in the week, but they're back up. And it looks like the foreigners are beginning to come back and looking at the blue chips. As you're looking at the sentiment for the Nairobi Securities Exchange, remember that anytime we're looking at the investor sentiment here, we're also keeping tabs on what is happening globally. This week, we've actually seen the sentiment turn in as far as equities in the United States are concerned. We've seen them close in the red for the last 2-3 days over the week, and there's a bit of profit taken there. Now, the key thing that we're looking out for in the US markets is the upcoming election cycle in November, and we expect to see a bit of profit taking across some of the counters that have rallied. So if you are an investor in that space, then perhaps there's a good opportunity, or rather what we are seeing is some people taking profit. And if they have a mandate for investing in Africa, then they are actively looking at the Kenyan equity market. Let's take a look at the movers for the day as well as the price gainers. The next slide, please. Right, so we have the top movers there, as we had said. Safaricom, 28.9 million shares traded yesterday at between 29 and 30 shillings per share. This is what contributed largely to the 1.2 billion you have seen there in terms of turnover. Let's continue looking at that. You can see it's brought to you courtesy of Harvest. Equity Group Holdings, 6.7 million shares traded. It went up slightly above the 36 mark. It had come to about 35.5 shillings per share. Uchumi Supermarkets, putting a star there, an asterisk. We got a question and we answered this, but we're beginning to see a bit of activity here. Nothing has been made public, but anytime we see activity happening on a stock, then it's sort of an indicator of a material announcement that is about to happen. So 3 million has gone through Uchumi Supermarkets. It's trading at 0.4 cents per share. We will try and find out over the weekend if there's any information that you need to be aligned to in terms of what is happening in this particular counter. KCB Group, 668. Bamburi Cement is the other stock that we've been looking out at. It was at 20 shillings yesterday. Just before I came to the show, it traded at 22 shillings, 21.95. It's already up 2 shillings in a day. Yesterday, 588,000 shares traded. Today, 721,000 shares traded. If you have looked at the company and you're okay with the fundamentals, I suggest you probably buy this company at this point in time, or at least consider looking at it for the long term. The key thing that we've had this week, we were able to host a representative from Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Job Wanjohi is the head of policy and advocacy as well as research at the Association of Manufacturers. He was with us here virtually in studio yesterday, and we're talking about the manufacturing segment. And what stood out from our conversation is he said that he's seeing recovery in building and construction material, the demand for this and the supply for this. Bamburi Cement plays in that space. So there's a bit of homework that I need to do as well as you need to do just to understand who is the buyer and what brands are being bought. But that said, Bamburi at 20 doesn't look like it's going to go lower. If you are looking at a long-term opportunity to buy this stock, maybe something worth considering. And the other thing we like about them is they have actually been working on the middle line, operational efficiencies. We are still a bit cautious because the numbers they released were 13% lower in terms of revenue for the half year in this 2020. So we are still a bit cautious. But if it's a long-term buy, when you see activity, 588,000 shares yesterday, 721,000 today, then you really want to start paying attention, especially if you want to take a long-term position on this stock. Let's see who the top losers were. Okay, I don't know if I'm repeating myself. All right, so the top losers there. Okay, so we have the list of top losers there for you. So what is happening outside of the NSE in terms of corporate news? Two key things that you need to pay attention to. Currency, is that becoming a bit of an issue? Maybe yes, maybe not. The headlines earlier today did say that the reserves for Kenya were down 51 billion shillings. Now, we have been seeing the Central Bank of Kenya interject, come into the market to support the currency. This week, the Central Bank of Kenya has been muted in activity, and we're just talking to different traders and just trying to get a sense of direction that this could possibly trade. It's the end of the month. End of the month normally has a lot of demand from people who need dollars to be able to make their imports. And also, we have demand that has piled up from the COVID-19 season where people needed to bring in merchandise, but there was no way of bringing it out because of the restrictions in movement. So as the restrictions on movement are lifted, locally as well as globally, we certainly expect a pent-up demand for the hard currency for importers in this economy. That could portray a bit of weakness on the currency, but that's on a short-term basis. So we will continue to look at this particular line in terms of the foreign currency and the exchange rate to see what is happening there. For that conversation, I hope that you will be available to be with us again next week. We have a lineup of interesting guests who will be able to give us the macros and give us the trigger points when we are looking at the currency. Final news for the day. Earlier in the week, Dr. James Mwangi got an award, and this was the Oslo Business Peace Award. This award is like saying you're getting a Nobel Prize for business. So he has been awarded as a business leader. He has been recognized for his contribution in enhancing financial inclusion in East and Central Africa. He's also been recognized for his sustainable business practices and the social impact that his business has had. That's some interesting news and could be one of the drivers that was pushing up the price as we saw earlier in the day. It doesn't have a direct link to what happens in the market, but it was something just to flag for you to know what are the key headlines from the corporate news desk. We take a short break. When we come back, we will be joined by Nahashan and we'll be talking about Tanzania. What is happening there? What does it mean to move from one income bracket to another income bracket as far as the World Bank and the IMF are concerned? As always, it's Friday. I want to hear, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? How has the week been for you? Where are you watching us from? But most importantly, what we've discussed today, what we've discussed during the week, what would you like to know? 20146 is our SMS line. We take a short break. See you in a few.